Welcome to Inspiring Business with your host, Mark Bullock, who is the co-founder of videosocials.net and of videointerviewpodcast.com. In every episode, Mark interviews business and organizational thought leaders who share their stories of how they inspire others by making a difference. You can find this show on videosocials.net and YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and almost any podcast platform of your choosing.
Welcome, and today I am delighted to have a client, a friend, Adam Halper. And Adam is a mediator, a collaborative attorney, and parenting coordinator. He specializes in helping people resolve conflicts in the areas of matrimonial, family, employment, and commercial law. Adam, lovely to have you today. Thanks so much for being here. How you doing?
Mark, I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to our talk.
Well, terrific. And I often start when I interview mediators, because we drank the Kool-Aid about 15 years ago when I met my first mediator, and actually she became a client and was one of our most longstanding clients of Practice Marketing, and that's Ada Haslacher. And I just believe in what you guys do, and I warn you in advance. And I know part of your company name, New York ADR, has that A in there, and I'm on a personal mission to eliminate the word alternative.
Cheers, Mark.
It is.
To have allies. It's really good to have allies.
So, Adam, you are doing mediation, parenting coordination, collaborative law in what area of New York is it?
I'm in Southern Westchester. I practice in a variety of places: New York City, Westchester, Dutchess. I go other places. Since the pandemic, I meet with a lot of people virtually and do a lot of mediation. Even now, I still do it, a lot of it via Zoom. And just in the recent past, I've had a few in Columbia County and farther. So I'm all over New York and, quite honestly, the tri-state area.
That's terrific. And I have to say, prior to the pandemic, I couldn't convince a single mediator client that they could mediate via a video conference. And now all of you are doing exactly that. So it's this business of driving around, my gosh. So
adapt or die. Adapt or die. That's all you got to know.
Absolutely. Well, so you're an attorney, and I don't think you started out as a mediator, when you got your law practice. So I always like to start, my conversations with my guests is, what's your story? How did that come about? What got you into this, and what was your background leading up to it? In 5 minutes or less. Yeah.
It's I think I can do it in 5 minutes. I could probably do it in less. I came from a background where, right out of law school, I started in the legal services, legal aid arena, mm-hmm. Right? Specifically at a not-for-profit that was dedicated to working with and representing survivors of domestic violence, and then thereafter at legal services in the South Bronx. And for the most part, I was doing matrimonial and family law, and thereafter, I became a director at a very interesting not-for-profit called the Family Center, which works exclusively with families and individuals affected by severe illness. That not-for-profit kind of got its start during the HIV crisis, and then as that crisis kind of changed, the mission of that not-for-profit changed too, and I was the director of the legal services department there. And over time, I kind of found myself in just about every court in New York, and specifically in New York City. In 1 week, I would practice in Supreme, Family, Surrogates Court, Administrative Court, Housing Court, and courts that, if I named them right now, most people who are watching this probably don't know that they exist, right? And because at the end of the day, if you have a health issue or have a family member with a health issue, and you're of modest means or you're low income, you have a legal issue soon thereafter.
Right.
what I saw over many years was that the way we approach conflict is, well, certainly, has a lot of merit, not the least of which is it's a system designed to arrive at a result. And that result is usually binary. I win, you lose, you win, I lose. There are a lot of steps along the way, and I'm really reducing our entire legal system to a soundbite, and I fully understand that. But at the end of the day, it's a very kind of binary system. And what I found myself thinking, honestly, that really over time is that it's the legal system. I'm a big fan of it. I'm a lawyer. I know a lot of lawyers. I know lawyers are watching this. I know a lot of people on the bench. It's great at a lot of things. It's not necessarily great at handling everything. And most of the problems that my clients had, most of the problems that my clients, the conflicts that my clients have now, they don't really belong in a binary black and white kind of rubric. Most things are more gray. Most things are a little bit more complicated than they appear. Wrong and right are not such easy concepts to nail down, and often subject to perspective and interpretation. And when that was brought home to me in a couple of really, really challenging cases, sometime maybe between 2010 and 2012, I started looking at dispute resolution processes. And I took my first mediation training. I took another mediation training. I met some more people. I got on a panel. I was doing all of this while my children were being born, and while I was also the director at this not-for-profit, effectively, insofar as I could tell, I was doing 3 jobs at once. But the more I did it, when I say more, I mean the more alternative dispute resolution work I did, it felt to me like it was more the way to go for me. And it felt honestly like it was more the way to go for a lot of my clients. As I was leaving that universe, New York started to do something called presumptive ADR, meaning that there's a big push right now in the civil justice system to manage cases in the ADR, the alternative dispute resolution area, before they go to litigation or at some time during the litigation process, to kind of see if people can settle their cases as opposed to simply litigating them in a more traditional format. And I went out on my own in 2019, not long honestly before the pandemic, and it's just been great, and in many ways, and in ways that I never could have possibly predicted when I started my own practice. I would certainly encourage anyone watching this to never ever start your own solo practice in the middle of a global apocalypse. Don't do that. I can really, Mark, we can ride this one until the wheels come off on this podcast. But we'll save that maybe for part 2 on Adam Halper. But in the end, I think mediation, collaborative law, parenting coordination, all of these are alternative dispute resolution processes. They offer clients a lot, and insofar as I'm able to do it, I've really enjoyed it, and I intend to keep going for as long as I can.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So obviously you've drank the Kool-Aid now. And
I have.
I've been working with mediators for, again, 15 years. So I've heard every side of the coin and all of the potential advantages. But for our listeners and our audience, can you tell me a little bit about your work and what you do and how that differs from what they might traditionally run into in let's hire opposing attorneys and go to war?
Right. So, yeah, absolutely, Mark. And it's a really interesting question because I wear a couple of different hats. So if you contact me and you're contacting me in the capacity of a mediator, very often I'm contacted by people who don't yet have attorneys, or I'm being contacted by attorneys who are looking to kind of, bring or attempt to bring a dispute to resolution. The hat I'm wearing is that of a neutral. Right. And so what I'm interested in there is a number of things, but what I'm interested in there is facilitating a conversation.
Right.
honestly, that's what mediation is. It's a heck of a lot more complicated than that, but in truth, if I were just to reduce it to a couple of words, I'm there to facilitate a conversation on how we might be able to dispose of something that is keeping you up all night, every night. And costing you probably a significant amount of money if you're in litigation or you're anticipating litigation. In that capacity, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of work with both sides. It's a lot of conversation with both sides, and kind of, I always start off the same way, which is generally they submit information to me, or what's called pre-submissions. I review all of it thereafter. I have phone calls, usually with counsel, often with parties as well, just so they can hear my voice. And depending on the kind of case it is, whether it be matrimonial, employment, commercial, there's either a day or a series of days in which we plan to come together and discuss it. How that works and how it's set up is often a function of timing and when people need to kind of see if we can get this done. It's also a function of money, to be perfectly honest. If we want to try and get this done, maybe the attorneys want to take a step back so that they're not getting paid for the time. It becomes kind of a dance to figure that out. But what ultimately I think the engine that drives the train is what's going to be best calculated to have two or more parties arrive at an agreement, and that's a process that's very flexible. And that's what I'm doing as a mediator. As a collaborative attorney, I'm acting as an advocate. I'm acting much more in the role of an attorney in the way people commonly think of an attorney. The difference between collaborative law and kind of the law that most people know from television is that I'm really there to not just advocate, but I'm there to advocate very strongly towards getting us to a resolution and to assisting my client towards getting a resolution. Otherwise, I'm signing off, right? And there's something in collaborative law called a participation agreement, which basically says if I can't get you there, and in other words, we can't get you there, me, the other attorney, whoever it may be, the team of people that form a collaborative team, this is most often in the context of a divorce, we're going to fire ourselves. And you'll hire litigation counsel. Everyone is well incentivized not only to be a proper and strong advocate, but they're also well incentivized to really problem solve, which is, also a big part of alternative dispute resolution from any level. And last but not least, Mark, parenting coordination, which is a thing that many people are not familiar with. It's kind of a quasi-alternative dispute resolution process. It often happens post-judgment. It's obviously connected to families. It's a child-focused approach to mediation and to dispute resolution. I often refer to it as kind of an ongoing mediation for very, very high conflict couples, often after they've gotten divorced and still the problems continue in connection to children. What I'm doing is working with them, to implement a parenting plan or to kind of, in some other way, lower the volume on whatever the conflict is so that they can co-parent effectively for their children. What all of these have to do, with each other, I suppose, is that, at the end of the day, I'm often listening for the third story. It's my story, it's Mark's story. Well, then those stories may have some commonalities, maybe not. But at the end of the day, more likely there's a third story to be told here. And this is actually a book, and that's the story that we want to try and get at, because that's usually the place where people, if they can hear it, say, that makes sense to us. That's the way a judge might see it. That's the way a jury might see it. That's the way the other side might be seeing it to a certain level, and understanding that, let's come to peace in the following way. And those are the hats I wear, and that's what the work I do, kind of day in and day out. And it's quite honestly, it's an honor. It's really the honor of bearing witness.
Awesome. Well, do you have a favorite story or case that you can tell us about and kind of relay how all this might tie in?
Sure. Too many to count. I think if you've come from legal services, if you've come from, the world of alternative dispute resolution, it's like there are almost too many stories to tell. But a few recently in 2023, have surprised me. So not that maybe longer ago than I think it may have been. I was approached by two attorneys with whom I had worked with in the past. They were both two commercial litigators, and the dispute was, I'm trying to do this in a careful way, but I can't imagine that anybody, watching this would ever know who any of these people are. But concerned a family-held business, a closely held family business, in which two brothers were fighting over a lot of things, but not the least of which was, insofar as I could tell, more or less how to separate. If it wasn't going to be the solution of the business, it was how one or the other was going, or both were going to leave and kind of extract the equity from the business and also continue on their work, which was in a very, very particular area that there isn't that, these are two people who, or this business is a business that is known for doing this work. And there just aren't that many of them. It's kind of specialized. And both of the attorneys, at almost from the moment that I spoke to each one of them, said the following words to me. They said, "Adam, this is never, ever going to settle. Just so we're clear, this is not going to settle, and we have very, very slim hopes. However, our litigation costs are ramping up, and we've had document exchange, et cetera, and the costs are getting higher and higher, and we're kind of at that moment where, it's either settle now or we go down the luge. We go right down, into depositions and just tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in possible, costs here, and we want to avoid that for everyone. And not the least of which is that there are other things at play here, which is that they want to get on with their lives. They don't want to spend the next 2 years of their lives doing this. So with that, I said, okay, why don't we start like this? We're never, and it was some version, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was some version of, okay, so we're never going to settle. Fair enough. That's how every case that I have begins. Why don't we just assume that? Let's get away from merits. Let's get away from arguing our cases. Let's, if we can, as much as possible, try and get away from venting about how much the other side is bad and how right we are. Why don't we just walk in on the day of, and we planned on an entire day starting early in the morning to, as long as we needed to go into the next day, if possible, if we had to, hopefully not. And let's just start problem solving from the very beginning. Let's problem solve. Let's just have an agenda. Let's just problem solve from the very beginning. Let's just start assuming that all the other stuff that people often talk about, which is, Adam, I want to tell you why this person is so bad. I need to justify all of this to you. It's almost like I'm a judge, which I constantly reinforce that I'm not. It's in your hands. It's not in mine. Again, I just facilitate the conversation.
Past focused versus future focused.
Exactly, and it perfectly said, Mark. And with that future focus, all kinds of things happen. People exchanged. They sent each other emails and texts while we were emailing each. People took pictures of things, and I ran into the other side. It happened. It happened at my office in White Plains, and I was kind of going back and forth and making photocopies and doing this and that. But at the end of the day, it ended up being, quite honestly, a series of bullet points on a legal pad. That just got run back and forth. And what do you think of this? Flip the page. What do you think of this? And sometime early in the evening, all of the points had been accounted for. What the parties were really interested in had been accounted for, which is that they wanted to save face. They wanted to, remarkably, preserve their relationship with each other. Even just in a business context, there was a geographic issue, and they wanted to be able to both do business in this geographic area. They wanted to share customers. They wanted to continue in this very specialized area of work, and not be in business together. And so that as well, and they were able to do it. And I think it's because from the moment we sat down right after we got past that point of saying this is never going to settle, We said, well, okay, well, how could it? If we could wave a magic wand, what would we do? If we could
Hmm.
just talk about the problem and not attack the person, how could we get there? And it was not an easy process, and there were certainly some hiccups along the way, even during the day of, and some of them were really challenging to work through. But at the end of the day, they got there. And the last I heard, and one of the attorneys kind of reached out to me not that long ago regarding a different matter. They said, they're still everything's still okay. It's the business is no more, or one of them took it and kind of named it something else, but whatever it may be. But everything's still going kind of in the way that they had worked to do, to have it go down that way. And they were really happy. And I have to say that the word that I took away from that was relief. That they were was relieved. To be in
Right.
conflict with your family, to have it be about money or and your work and your future and your livelihood, and all of these things got kicked up in this mediation, which was both very much business and was very much personal. It was very much a lot of things. The relief that they felt, was reflected in a lot of things. I think most certainly in what they said to me, but also in their body language, which I have to say changed throughout the day. One of the people here was remarkably big, and at one point, when he stood up, I was wondering if he was going to hit me or not. But suffice it, by the end of the day, he somehow, his whole body, his language changed. He looked like a giant teddy bear. And I think, that's what it is to that's what dispute resolution is really about, kind of, in a nutshell, is to kind of take it all and put it in a bubble, put it in a box, whatever analogy you want to use, and say, you know what, now we're going to put that over there, and now we're going to, figure out this problem and move on from there. It's a story that I've been thinking about a lot, and it was nice to have the attorney call me. That was kind of a surprise, but invariably, it was it was a good outcome. But more specifically, I think it was kind of an illustration of what dispute resolution is.
I think it's a beautiful illustration of what is possible
Yeah,
with
thank
mediation,
you.
um, and in a situation in which the individual parties can't see possibility because they're so focused on looking back, they're so focused on who did who wrong that they can't look forward. They
Right.
literally can't. They can't look forward. So until and what they are looking for is let's face it, it's usually a fantasy, right? So
That's
it's like,
absolutely correct.
right. So all that being said, you being a neutral, you not being attached to an outcome, you being willing to look at it and break it down to its component parts of what are the problems that we need to solve. Let's start solving problems and then see if and it never ceases to amaze me. Those of us that are in professional communications, I don't care if it's sales, mediation, whatever it is, you've got to help people get to the point that they can actually look forward to and see something possible for themselves rather than constantly living in the what's not possible. It's not possible because this happened, and it's not possible because that happened. It's not possible because they did this. It's not possible because I did that. And it's all water under the bridge.
Mark, I think you're really saying something there. It's very hard to. It's very hard. I'm sure there's a ton of science on this, which I'm certainly not equipped to discuss in any way. But people can't make the decision. People can't. They don't make the same decisions, let's say, in their business life as they do in their personal life. When I suppose all this is when they're reactive, right? And that's really
Right.
the word I was searching for. When people are reactive, which is kind of what you're describing, because they're reliving whatever this trauma is, this moment when it all went bad, the moment when they found out their spouse was cheating, like whatever it is, they are living this highly reactive moment over and over again. And then someone like me is coming to them and saying, look, we got to make a business decision here. And it is extremely hard to do that. But, through time, through process, by thinking about it carefully and honestly, Mark, through the kind of conversation that you're talking about, that we're talking about here, everything can change. It's not that people walk away hugging and kissing and all of that, but they certainly walk away shaking hands and saying, this is good enough for right now. And I think that's kind of where the healing begins. It's not like this great moment, or there's no great epiphany. No one's going to back off of their position, but they're happy they met in their interests. And getting past that reactivity that you talk about, really the past, even momentarily. It's honestly, watching it happen and helping it happen if I can. It's really something. And again, that relief is it's very palpable.
Well, may I suggest that it borders on, if not is inclusive of, inspiration.
Oh, cheers! Thank you. Honestly, I was never sure I was going to do this work, and from my first training, they said, it's very hard to do this work for about 1 million different reasons. Years later, here I am, and I think it's because of these kinds of experiences.
Well, and if I may, this podcast is self-sponsored, right? So, Practice Marketing Incorporated is my business partners in my company. We have 3 primary services: phoneblogger.net, Video Socials, which you're a member of, and Video Interview Podcasts, which is the engine that is running this podcast right now, as a matter of fact. So, without getting into a long dissertation, and I kind of want to ask you your experience of it, because Video Socials is one of those things that you basically have to experience it in order to understand it, and to see what's possible for yourself. So I'll give you 15 seconds of why we created it. We created it because the vast majority of the people on the planet are not natural and comfortable sitting down in front of an inanimate object called a camera and be willing to have a conversation with this inanimate object and project a message to be able to communicate with a future audience that's going to be watching what's being recorded as a video, and have that come off and be comfortable in doing so, and confident that what they're doing is actually going to have an impact, going to have the effect that they want. So we developed a process by which people come together and we do it together. So we have typically 5 to 8 professionals get together in a meeting, and we take turns recording our 2 or 3 minute video blogs. And those may be blogs, they may be commercials, they may be videos for websites, they may be social media postings, et cetera, but basically it is getting it done. Whereas if we're left to our own devices, marketing is always taking a back seat. It needs to take a back seat to client service, but it generally takes a back seat to basically anything else, because everybody that is a practicing professional that is trying to accomplish something in the world, the last thing on their list that they're looking to try to get done today is to create some marketing content. The reality is that really good marketing content doesn't come across as marketing content. It comes across as something that's of value, that's educational, that's informational, and it helps people move forward. And if you can do that on video, well, that also helps you set up yourself in the minds of those that are seeing that video, as an example, as a branded professional, as a true expert, not only as an expert, but as somebody that they get to know, like, and trust, because they're seeing you on video and they're seeing you be authentic and they're seeing you provide them with something valuable. And then they see a few of those, and guess what? Now they're not calling a stranger, they're calling somebody that they have gotten familiar with. They have a sense of what it's going to be like to be in a conversation with. So You're a recent member, and we're very much looking forward to seeing some of your dozen or so videos that you've recorded out there on YouTube. But why did you join Video Socials, Adam, and what is it providing you so far?
Mark, I've thought about this, this question in a couple of different ways, because I've had this discussion, with another one of your partners in the past, and I think it for me at least, I don't know how much this applies to other people, but for me at least, it kind of, something along, why did I join? I could talk forever about what it is to work with marginalized populations as a lawyer, and the value of things like access to justice, and why it is that, it's not really great that mediation is often reserved for people with significant money, and there's all of it. Why mediation is a great process to try, regardless of, how much you believe in the rightness of your cause. I could go on forever about that. And I have at various times. What I am very, very self-conscious about is putting myself into any part of that narrative, because I don't want to seem like a braggart. I don't want to, I don't want to engage in, it's not, a lot of times what I say in mediation is, it's not about me. This isn't about me, right? You don't have to, right? And so I feel like in some ways, that is something that you learn. That is, being quiet is a way to learn a lot more than talking. Rather, listening is a better way to learn than talking. And it's something professional, something that all of us learn, right? Which is that what you don't want to do is talk a lot about yourself, right? You want to be interested in the other person. I think Video Socials is a way to bridge the gap between those two polarities, which is, I'm very passionate and feel very strongly about this work that I do. Let me tell you all about it. And I don't really want to say anything about myself, because that feels kind of like an aw shucks, and I'm embarrassed to do that, and I don't want to do that, and it makes me cringe. Video Socials is somehow, by doing it in a group, by doing these videos in a group, by doing it very quickly, and by doing these snippets, is a way to bridge that gap. It's a way to get your voice out there about what you're passionate about, while also at the same time having it be a little about you, so that people might actually call you, and you can keep engaging in the work that you love, and providing service and being of service, which is quite honestly all that I think any of us really want to do. And so that's what Video Socials means to me. I think there's more to say about it, but it really is kind of the bridge between kind of what you love and being a professional, and talking about yourself in that way, and in an appropriate way, and to people that you've never met, and maybe you'll never meet them, and maybe you will. So that's what it is for me.
Well, thank you. And I've never heard it expressed that way, and it's very true. Basically, it is an inspired business. And it is the culmination of my life's work. So thank you for taking it on, and thank you for your participation, because everyone is a contribution to everyone else in the environment. So and enough about Video Socials, other than, folks, come as a guest. There's no cost. There's no obligation. You'll be welcomed. It's a judgment-free zone. Just go to videosocials.net, click on the guest tab at the top of the screen, and schedule for any meeting that's available. We'd love to meet you. But I really wanted to come back to Adam. How do people get a hold of you? And you're quite out there when it comes to social media. So you've got a strong social media presence. Thank you for that. But your website is New York ADR. You're on LinkedIn at Adam J. Halper. You've got a YouTube channel coming.
It's happening.
You're on Facebook at adamjhalper.mediator. You're on Instagram at I am Adam Halper. And you used to be on Twitter, and you're not anymore.
Things change.
Thank you. So, there'll be links, folks, so you don't have to memorize all that and write it down. There'll be links to all that below. But just before I ask you, who should call you and under what circumstances, et cetera, who do you best serve? Which is what I want to close with. I had asked you in the past, a favorite quote that you had, and it's one of my favorite quotes, and so I wanted to read it, and that's, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So be kind always. And Brad Meltzer was the person who created that quote, and I couldn't agree more, because let's face it, we are all dealing with adversity in one level or another, one way or another, and some and many of those that you have served currently and in the past are dealing with a lot of battles that and we just don't know what people are dealing with and what people are going through, and so be kind, and I love that. But back to our final question is, who should call you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that quote, Mark. Who should call me is kind people. Which I have to be honest with you is really a tricky one to insist on. Most often, the other comment I get frequently is, Adam, you should know I wasn't always like this, or you're not seeing the best side of me at this moment. Understood. That's why you came to me in the first place. Anyone involved or in a civil litigation, post-litigation, pre-litigation, involved in a conflict where they feel like a facilitated conversation is appropriate, even if they feel like there's very little chance. Even if they feel like the chance is 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, or I don't know what it is, every single case that I have ever seen resolved had absolutely no chance of resolving right before the moment that it did. Zero chance, it was zero probability, and then there was some kind of a breakthrough, the ice melted, whatever analogy you want to use. Who calls is someone looking for an advocate in a collaborative process, someone who's looking for a mediator to really try and figure out what that third story is to help to bring them and the other side to resolution, and parents who after all of the processes they've already gone through say, you know what, we need someone to come in and help us with this so that we don't ruin our kids forever. So that's who should call me. And, if it doesn't work out with me, don't worry about it. I'll refer you to somebody else, maybe somebody else on video socials. It's, I'm here to be of service, and, I welcome all questions and inquiries.
Excellent, Adam. Well, listen, thank you so much. We literally could go on for days, and I think my one takeaway that's been repeated a couple of times now is that, resolution isn't possible until it is. And seeking it, finding ways to make it happen, maybe it's through mediation, maybe it's through collaborative, maybe it's through a court of law. But the reality is that be willing to look and consider the fact that although you can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, Adam may very well be able to see that for you and open that door and shed some light on what might be possible. So thank you, Adam. Take care.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Inspiring Business with your host, Mark Bullock. Your positive comments, likes, and most importantly, your sharing of this show with others is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to the Inspiring Business Podcast on whatever platform you prefer. You can catch prior episodes on videosocials.net and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the major podcast platforms.